And we are live. Thank you for tuning in for episode 6 of Bowtie Certified, where I follow the journey of others through certifications and learning and how they got to from A to B. And my name is Anthony Tsavelis. I am a trainer in Google Cloud. And today I have a very special guest, Eric Hallow. Eric, welcome.
How's it going, Anthony?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Great. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So, Eric was, I actually bumped into him in our, in my usual tech studies Slack group. So if you haven't come on by. It's a party. Everyone's talking about tech, certifications, learning, the whole gamut. It's fantastic. A lot of great people there. Anyways, I was in the Slack channel. I bumped into Eric. He was telling me his story, and I was like, whoa. I don't want to steal your thunder, Eric. So I just wanted to, we'll start off by asking, what were you doing before diving into the tech industry, and what made you decide that this was your path? And bring us, as far back as you'd like, and give us the story.
Sure. Well, I started playing poker at a young age, probably about 13, 2003, which is when a lot of people started playing poker, because that was the poker boom, Chris Moneymaker. What was that?
I said, was it 2003?
2003. It's the first time it was on ESPN, and they showed you the cards. So
wow.
From there is kind of when poker started exploding, and a lot of people started playing. So as a young teenager at the time, me and a group of friends really got into it. That time we were playing for quarters, dollars, not much. Just playing because we love to play. So
right.
That's when I started playing poker, and I kind of played all the way up until college. I did take it seriously, but never really planned on doing it for a job. Then I went off to Purdue University in Indiana, where I started a business degree, concentrating in finance, and that's something I'm still very interested in, and is the business side of things. When I graduated college, I went out looking for jobs, looked around in the market, and kind of wasn't really finding what I liked. And this is part of the story where you're probably thinking, oh, he went off to play poker professionally. But no, I went and I got a job at a bank part-time, and I went to get my MBA. I got my MBA in roughly a year and a half to 2 years.
What were you doing at the bank?
I was just a teller position, customer service type stuff, help managing like the flow of money in and out with the vault and things like that. Nothing too complicated. I was going to school at night, so I wanted something a little bit easier, because I was more focused on my MBA at that point.
Okay.
And towards the end of my MBA, I actually decided to quit that job and focus full-time on the job search. And once again, I was finding better job opportunities this time, but it was still kind of in the back of my head that like I wanted to play poker and give it a shot. And at that time where I was doing my job search, I started playing some poker again, just in my spare time, going to the casinos in the Chicagoland area. And I started doing quite well, and it was a little easier than I thought it would be.
So let's go all in, right?
So yeah, basically what happened is sometimes you just start running hot, and even if you are a good player, you're winning more than you're probably expecting to win. And I started off very hot, and I was just thinking, maybe now's the time to give it a shot before I make before I'd move anywhere or do anything else like that. I was living around where my parents were at. I could go to the casinos in that area. If, something bad happened, I had a family structure to fall back on.
Okay.
So it seemed like a pretty good opportunity to chase a passion of mine. So it was around 2014 when I decided to give poker a shot full time. And it did start going well pretty early on. And that is when I started investing in a lot of coaching. In poker, a lot of the general players that you are playing against don't spend a lot of time studying or getting coaching from people. So in the poker world, it's kind of like, comparable to getting certifications. You're trying to level up your skill set. So I started doing that. I started working with coaches. It's very expensive because when a coach teaches you something, you have that forever. And if they teach you something that makes you say $20 an hour, you get to use that forever. So, you'll pay thousands of dollars for 10 hours of coaching if it's a very good coach. So I really made that commitment and really pushed to be a very good player and focus on the studying aspect of it.
Okay.
And yeah, it went very well for a good amount of time, but there were definitely some road bumps. If you know anything about poker, even the best players will lose for extended periods of time.
I don't. And I'm actually curious when it comes to poker coaching, like what is that all about? What's the, are there techniques that they show you, just different ways of doing things?
Yeah, sure. So anytime you do coaching with a poker player, they'll kind of break it down by finding your leaks. And a leak is any situation where you'll be losing in your game. So in poker, you play a lot of hands and there's a lot of patterns and common situations that you'll encounter. So if you have a leak where you're losing money in those situations, that can be very costly. So poker coaches will help identify that area and fix it.
Cool.
Basically, what a lot of poker coaches do early on is focusing on good fundamentals, because if you make a mistake fundamentally, it just grows and grows and gets bigger and bigger. So I guess what do you know about poker? Do you know about like the flop, the turn, the river? Do you know anything?
I don't know, man. I know basic poker.
Okay, I'll give you a quick rundown then.
Okay.
Everyone's dealt a series of cards depending on the game you're playing, and then most games have a betting round. Say you would get dealt your 2 cards, you'd have a betting round. Then there would be community cards dealt out, and basically you try and match your cards in your hand to the community cards, and then the first 3 cards as a community card are the flop, and then there's an additional card the turn, an additional card the river. So there's 5 cards total.
Okay.
There's betting rounds in between each of those, and you as a poker player are trying to make the best decision during each round. So I kind of lost the thread of where I was going with this, but
well, you know what? It's very well explained.
Basically, you're just trying to make good decisions in each round, and coaches can identify areas during the flop, during the turn, during the river, in where you're making mistakes. So you kind of search for those areas, and if you start with a mistake before the community cards come out, by the time you get to the last community card, the mistake grows exponentially because there's more and more money put in. So if you make a mistake that costs you, say, like 2% on every dollar you put in, there's more dollars put in by the end of the community cards. That 2% grows larger.
And there's your finance coming through.
There you go. Yeah. So a little bit of a long-winded explanation, but yeah, that's the best I got as far as an explanation goes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm sure that they also, coaches also go through your tells, if you like, do one of these or one of these or.
Yeah, definitely. I would say the best thing to do is just to try and breathe, relax, stay calm, and not touch your face.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, yeah. But anyways, as far as the poker goes, I did play a lot of poker in the casino, but I also did a lot of poker online.
Okay.
Internet. So that's a completely different ball game, because at the casino you can get roughly like 30 to 40 hands an hour.
Mm-hmm.
When you play online on a computer, you can play as many tables as you want. You can get up to 700.
Wow.
So I've played millions of poker hands online, and I've probably played hundreds of thousands of poker hands in a casino, maybe 100,000. It's hard to really tell.
That's
But
insane.
yeah, if you play online poker, you can really gain a lot of experience, and you get really good at pattern recognition.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take that into when you play live poker. So
Okay.
they're two different disciplines. And you can take little bits from each of them and kind of mesh them into your overall strategy.
This is like totally fascinating for me.
I could talk about this for hours, but I'll keep it pretty short. And
Well, we only have an hour. So how long did you play professional poker?
So roughly 8 years, because I do count a couple years. I was playing a little more full time when I was doing stuff in school.
Right.
But yeah. So it's been full time for 8 years, and that's with all my income coming from poker.
Got it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what happened after poker?
So towards the last few years of poker, I started to, I guess, maybe not enjoy the lifestyle as much, because when you play poker, you kind of have to play long hours late at night. I got married a year ago.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Bought a house with my wife, and a lot of my priorities were shifting, and I was looking for just a little bit more of a work-life balance, where poker probably has almost no work-life balance.
Like for real.
Yeah. Another reason was I really don't like spending a majority of my time in a casino when there's like no windows, no clocks. It's not my favorite place to be.
And that recycled air.
Yeah, the recycled air. It's not where you want to spend 40 hours a week. Let me tell you that. So I was looking for a lot of lifestyle changes, but I also became fascinated with building businesses, small SaaS businesses. I don't know if you're familiar with the Indie Hackers podcast.
I'm not.
Okay. Well, it's basically a community of people building SaaS businesses, small, medium, and large, all over the map. And they kind of just help each other out. And there's a podcast behind it. It's run by Cortland Allen. I believe Stripe ended up buying the podcast recently, but I started listening to them while I was playing poker at the poker table. And I was just really intrigued at how they would just take an idea and turn it into a business and use code to do it. And after listening to enough of those podcasts, I said, this is what I got to do. I need to learn how to code. I need to get better at these skills, because it's just, I was so much more interested in it than I was with poker. Whereas poker is something I did for a long time. There was maybe less of a ceiling. Poker is something where it's a zero-sum game, which means that when I win, I'm taking from somebody. Whereas if you're building a business, a lot more people can win with you. You
Yes.
can add value for your customers. You can add value for your investors, for your coworkers. So that was really kind of what hooked me. I wanted to work on something that had a higher ceiling where I could add value to more people. So yeah, I got interested in that podcast, started my research. How do I learn how to code? So
Wow. Just like that.
just like that.
Crazy.
So one of the first things I went to, obviously Google, but I came across a blog
Hmm.
by a former poker player turned developer. His name is Hasib Qureshi. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
No, I am not.
He
This is like a lot of firsts for me, poker,
sure,
this podcast.
yeah,
I wrote it all down.
yeah. Well, you never know what's gonna interest you and
Or
inspire
inspire
you.
you. Yeah.
But these are the things that I found, and this blog was talking about. It was titled "Cracking the Coding Bootcamp," and it's a little bit outdated. I think he did it in like 2014, and I was looking in this in 2018, 2019.
Mhm.
So the bootcamp landscape has definitely changed since then. Um, but he basically said everything you need to do to help starting to learn how to code. And he was
Right.
also a poker coach himself, so I kind of put a little bit more trust in him and listened to what he said
Mhm.
during that blog post. And one of the big things he said that I really took out of it is he talked about how to learn, and he did that by focusing on problem solving first. So it's a little counterintuitive, I think, than how most people learn how to code. But
Yes.
he would focus on the like data structures and algorithm problems much earlier on than most people,
Okay.
because of how well your brain can adapt to when you're trying to figure out a problem and how much learning goes on when you
Hmm.
try to figure out one of those problems.
Nice.
And a lot of that stuff is frustrating to do, but
Yes.
I kind of did that early on. And I think that really helped me identify patterns in the rest of my learning. So I
Nice.
started with Python, just focusing on syntax
Okay.
so I could get to the level where I could do those problems. So that was like the first thing I did.
And
Um,
how long did that take you?
I mean, the syntax stuff, I just did Code Academy, and
Okay.
that didn't take too long, a week or two, and then I just made some flashcards, started, you know, studying and looking at cheat sheets and just trying to, memorize all the functions and
Yeah.
little things about syntax, just so I could get enough to do this problem solving stuff.
Got
Uh,
it.
and then I jumped right into the problem solving, and I did that for maybe a month. And as a beginner doing that, it was like really frustrating,
I
and
bet.
yeah, and it was very frustrating and very time consuming. And
Mhm.
a problem that would take someone 10 minutes took me an hour and a half, and then I had to try and go over it again and make sure I retain that information, what I learned, and go over the patterns and the methods that were called and all these things. But it definitely, I think, saved me time later on. That
Mhm.
now it things come a little easier because I did that upfront work. Um,
Right.
but yeah, so that's right up to where I kind of started my coding journey, and since then, I kind of ditched Python for JavaScript and React.
Get out of here, Python. JavaScript. Come on in.
That became a little bit more of my focus, and I was kind of looking more at like front end stuff.
Okay.
And during that, kind of process of looking towards that front end stuff, I came across a lot of cloud stuff, and that's where things shifted.
Right.
I was just looking at YouTube videos, reading blog articles, and just realizing that cloud is where I need to go. And
Yeah.
kind of at that point, I'm all in on cloud, right? Like this is what I'm most passionate about, what I've had the best experience with. Like this is where I'm going to spend all my time. So I started off with the certifications, um, and I did. Sorry, what was that?
Which one did you start off with?
So I did the certified cloud practitioner, the very base level one. That's not as technical, I know. And then I moved on to the solutions architect.
Very nice. Very nice.
So cleared those, and that's kind of my story as far as the path that I took to get here so far.
So it was kind of a building block approach, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So it went from one type of coding to another type, and then you built cloud on top of that, and bam, you got yourself a SaaS product.
Basically, yeah. And in retrospect, it looks like I might have planned it out well, but it kind of was just me going through, trial and error and figuring out what I liked and what I was passionate about. And that takes a little bit of time, but I in the end I got there.
So you didn't have a strategy. It was just like trial and error.
Maybe trial and error was the strategy. I'm pretty comfortable trying a lot of different things,
right?
And seeing what works for me. So like if I encounter a problem, or like when I was studying for the solutions architect exam, a lot of that was trial and error. I would go over like a Udemy course, and then I would try a practice test, and sometimes it just wouldn't stick. So I would look for another way to try and learn the material. Some people are better visually learning, some people are better reading, whatever. So the solutions architect stuff, I really tried to hit it from every avenue. Like I'd watch a video, I'd draw out a diagram, do whatever I needed to do, and then kind of realize what worked for me, and then apply that to the rest of my studies. So that's kind of how I go about everything. Because I think it's very hard to know right away what's going to work, because everyone has their different learning styles, and everyone takes their different paths. So that's kind of what I did with my path to coding. It was a little bit of trial and error, but I kind of accepted that I was going to be uncomfortable for a while, and I was not going to have a clear direction until I did.
I guess that's a really good lesson learned, is that you gotta be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And that's awesome. I mean, there's a lot of people that would get into the struggle and just say, you know what, not for me, I'm out. But kudos to you for hanging in there, especially coming from an industry where it was completely different. I mean, I guess you could say that the way of thinking was very similar, because you're looking for patterns, right?
Yeah.
And usually that's what you do when you code and when you automate things in cloud. You're usually reusing code, or you're doing the same things over and over again. So
yeah, pattern recognition is probably the number one skill I've taken from poker to development, I would say. So absolutely.
Very nice. Very nice. Now, I know you haven't landed your first tech gig yet, but I did want to give the audience a sense of, all this learning that you've done, and, you've achieved these certifications, which I wanted to congratulate you on, by the way.
Thank you.
I think it's amazing. But I wanted to give the audience a sense of the hunt for that job, the hunt for what it is that is going to give you that, I guess, that sense of fulfillment of what you've been studying all this time.
Yeah. So I kind of started my job search maybe about a month ago.
Okay.
And again, trial and error. So
tell us all.
Yeah, I came up with a spreadsheet, and I just kept track of every application that I filled out. And I
Wow.
tried with one resume and just to see, what responses I would kind of get. So I did about 50 applications and
Okay.
with one resume, and I got 0 responses. I did these applications in the span of like 1 week, and then from there, I obviously realized that I wasn't coming across how I would have liked to, and
Okay.
or I'm not getting a hold of the right people, and my resume is just getting lost out in some Indeed database or wherever. Uh, so I made a post on Free Code Camp in the forums because
Okay.
that seemed like one of the good places to get feedback. And I
Mhm.
think I titled it, 50 applications, 0 interviews. So it got
That's all.
a lot of people coming to it. And they gave me some great feedback. And I found some areas where, like maybe subconsciously I was kind of avoiding, knowing because it was going to be a difficult thing to demonstrate skill wise. Like I might
Mhm.
have been putting off a project or whatever it would have been. And I needed somebody in the industry to kind of like give me that feedback and call me out and say like, hey, you need to do better here. And I went and looked for that feedback. I got that feedback and I kind of shifted up what I wanted to do. So from there, I decided I wanted to get a little bit more hands-on project experience. So I took a
Okay.
little bit of time off of my applying and focused on building projects that could demonstrate skills directly on the job. That's kind of where I came across Adrian Cantrell's content that I
Yes.
know you are familiar with. Um,
Yes, I am. Right
and
there.
the tech study Slack. And then I started doing some of those demos that he set forth, and those demos are very common um, things you will do on the job. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I went and looked for that experience, and I also decided to write blog posts on all those demos that I did. So for me, going through the demo once was a good learning experience, but I know sometimes I'll learn a little bit better just through writing about it or
Mhm.
trying to teach it to someone else. I tend to learn very well trying to teach something to someone else.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, when you teach something, you're just forced to understand it on a much deeper level because you're going to be
Absolutely.
questioned on it.
Yep.
So I wrote a series of blog posts, which I could then put on my resume and explain how I built these common cloud infrastructures. Um, Added that onto my resume. Um, Built another project, my cloud resume, which I can get into a little bit later. But I added that to the resume, and
Okay.
um, I started getting more responses. I put out a big LinkedIn post about a week ago and told my network that I was leaving poker full time to look for jobs in cloud, and I got a lot of great responses and some responses just from recruiters, and a lot of people ended up seeing it. So that so far has been a lot better way than just kind of applying on Indeed. So I did a little bit of the
Absolutely.
trial.
Absolutely.
And I mean, a lot of people could have guessed that it is much easier if you can get a hold of someone directly through your network, but it's not always clear in how to do that. So I took a couple different avenues trying that, and I figured out what worked best for me. And that LinkedIn post and a couple of the other things I did brought me to this podcast with you. And now I have another opportunity to get a hold of recruiters again.
Yes, absolutely. So recruiters, if you are out there and you are watching this, Eric is up for hire, and he's got skills. I mean, I talk about it so often, not just in my webcast and my podcast, but I talk about it all the time offline. The certification will get you into the interview, guaranteed, no problem. But if you don't have the skill set to match what you've learned through that certification, you will not pass the interview and you will not get the job.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just the bottom line. But when you can show that skill set, and when you can put it down on paper and talk about it, even if it is lab work, it's still skills. Like you still done it. I think that's fantastic, and I'm curious as to, were you getting more callbacks from putting those skills on your resume than when you didn't have them on your resume?
Oh yeah, absolutely, by far. So thanks, Adrian, if you're out there listening. It's been great so far.
Amazing, amazing. Yes, Adrian Cantrell, he's the man. I love that guy. I love that guy. One of my favorite Aussies.
Yeah.
No, this is great. I mean, there's a lot of people who watch this, and there's a lot of people out there that are struggling to get into the industry, and they think that getting a certification will get them a job. But like I said, you need that skill set in order to get you to that role that you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. And another thing I think that is probably overlooked is, not only do you want to find hands-on experience and projects that you can do, but it's even more beneficial if you can find a project that has a community behind it. Like Adrian has the Tech Study Slack, this Cloud Resume that I'm talking about. They have a Discord group where they help each other with building out this AWS resume project, basically. So not only are you able to learn things from doing that project, you're also able to get support from this network. You're able to help other people in this network, and that just really builds up the amount of people doing the exact same thing that you want to do for a job. So that's highly beneficial, and I always would recommend to anybody who's trying to break in is to find a project that has communities behind it, because learning from those people is invaluable.
Yeah, as Rob is saying, networking is extremely helpful. It's just like when I originally started in tech, because I thought that because everyone was an introvert, or a lot of them, a lot of people in tech are introverts. I thought that there wasn't going to be any help, and that people were just going to be kind of just whatever. But it's actually the opposite, I found. And people really want to help out in the tech industry.
Absolutely.
And I'm really thankful for that. Really
Yeah,
thankful.
I think the one thing that I noticed is, in the poker community, it's very common to look for coaching.
Mhm.
And in the developer community, it's not really as common as you look for one-on-one coaching or things like that. You more do tutorials or projects, watching
Yeah.
these courses or videos. But if you reach out to someone, they're almost, if you have any sort of connection with them, they're almost 100% going to help you out. Every time I came into a bump in the road where I hit a plateau and I needed to get past it, I struggled with it for like a week, and then I said, okay, it's time to go and ask for help. And I've reached out to people on Twitter without them even knowing me and say, hey, I saw some things you're doing. Can I ask for some help? Can you look at this code? And they would look at the code and they'd be like, this is what you're missing. This is what you need to get better at. And
That's
then I
awesome.
would get past that plateau. And this community has been more helpful than any other type of community I've ever been in.
Wow. That says a ton. And I mean, Twitter, like, who to thunk, right?
Yeah, Twitter, Discord, Slack, all of them.
That's crazy. That's crazy. But yeah, it just goes to show you that, networking is where it's at. You can't get help if you don't ask for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, with your previous learnings, with your MBA and your background in finance, how do you find that assisted you in your current development of being a developer and working in cloud?
Yeah. I think one of the most important skills you'll probably ever learn in any business degree is decision making, which is very common in poker as well. It's trying to find a decision that gains you net value. So I've kind of been able to take that mindset, that business mindset, and apply it to a lot of the things that I'm doing with development. So, I kind of started off with that trial and error, and then I kind of hone in by thinking, what's the best use of my time? What's the best way to go about this? And it's a little messy at first, but I kind of need that input to be able to make a good decision later on. Whereas, in the beginning, I was so inexperienced, I needed a lot more input to go through that decision-making process. So I was a little bit more all over the map. Now that I am more experienced, it's a little bit easier to, enter those things into a framework, and then make the decision on like, this is where I want to spend my time. So in any, if anything I could take away from my MBA and my finance experience is really the decision-making process. And, you can write out a framework for yourself and how you want to go through and make those decisions, and really just like focus on your mindset is like, I'm going to trust this framework that I understand and know, and this is how I'm going to arrive at answers from the decisions I've made. And if somewhere along the way you miss a step or something, you can like go back. Like the framework for me would be, I'm gonna try something, it's gonna be messy, I'm gonna learn a lot, I'm gonna hit a plateau, I'm gonna go search out for help, I'm gonna pass that plateau, I'm gonna hit another plateau, I'm gonna go search out for help, and over. But I kind of trust in that process, and that makes it really beneficial to learning. So yeah, I mean, that's common in a lot of industries, but I think that's one big takeaway from any sort of business thing is the process of coming to an answer and getting a decision.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Eric, what does the future look like for you?
Well, right now I've after a couple of the things I did on LinkedIn in the past week, and I'm looking for jobs, and I've had some good feedback so far, but I'm still very early on in the process. So I'm going to just continually get out there and network. And that's part of me coming on the show today, sharing my story. I'm also very happy that I can get out there in front of recruiters and network. So that's what's next for me. I do have, despite looking for jobs, I do have like a long list of skills I want to kind of check off, because I'm sure you know very well in development, there's a long list of things you need to learn, and it doesn't get smaller.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, I'm not strong at development myself, but there's just so much.
Yeah. So on the cloud side, I've been thinking of the certified developer associate certification, or potentially the solutions architect professional. I know Adrian recommends that if you do a lot of those demos, you're kind of further along the way to where you've done a lot of that work already, so you can do the professional certification. Those are two things I'm considering, as well as a couple other projects that I'd like to build. If now's a good time, I'd like to kind of touch on that cloud resume project that I built.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
So I came across this through Reddit. I was searching for AWS projects, something like that, and I came across the cloud resume. And this is basically a group run by Forrest. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the last name. Brazil. I'll link to his name to you so you can give him a shout out on LinkedIn. But he's really built a great community of people who help out with learning about AWS. So basically, this cloud resume is you build out visually the cloud resume through whatever you want, HTML, CSS. I chose React, and I used Tailwind CSS to build out my front end. And then you host it on S3. and then you use CloudFront and Route 53 for the routing and all that good stuff. And then the second half of the project is creating a visitor counter to display on your website. And you basically do that by calling the API gateway, which then runs a Lambda function, which then updates your DynamoDB table. So that's around 6 or 7 services I've named that are AWS services. But what it's doing is fairly simple, but it's really teaching the fundamentals. So you can, change that information in the table. You can use that API gateway in a different way and expand it to a larger project if you want, but you have those base set of skills. So I went through that project and I really learned a lot about just how to deploy these hands-on services in AWS. And part of it also is the backend part with the DynamoDB table, the Lambda function, and the API gateway. They want you to deploy it as infrastructure as code. So making a YAML file and filling out a template, which is also a great skill to have. So it really hits on a lot of skills that you will use on the job again. So I found that to be a great project and was very happy that there was a community behind it. And they have continued to add additional projects just with a slightly different take. I know the next one is a Python project, which maybe I'll come back to Python. And then I think the one after that is a machine learning project. So they're just continuing on this community after it had so much success with the resume. So I'm looking to stay involved there and to continue to level up my skills as I look for jobs and apply. Because for me, like once I get a job, obviously the learning's not going to stop because there's so much to learn. So I plan to stay very involved in a lot of communities that will help me level up those skills.
Yeah, I'm actually just looking at the Cloud Resume Challenge.dev website, and Forrest, I'm coming for you. I wanna check it out. I'm feeling a little challenged now.
Yeah, it's a great thing to take part in, and there's a ton of helpful people in the Discord, and I highly recommend it.
Awesome. So out of curiosity, you talked a lot about all these different services, a lot of tech that you've been dealing with. How long have you actually been doing the work with regards to development and cloud?
Just on the cloud side of it?
No, just development and cloud.
Development and cloud, about a year.
Wow.
So I've been playing poker part-time to pay the bills. And then, the rest of my time I spend just learning new skills and building new projects. So early on, I spent a lot of time getting little actually done, but a lot of learning. And then in this later half of it, I've been getting just a lot done and learning a lot. So kind of that process of what I was talking about earlier. In the last probably 4 months has been almost 100% cloud focused and developing with AWS and getting certifications and stuff like that. I know I spent 2 weeks straight studying for the Solutions Architect exam. I actually wrote a blog post about my exact process going through it. And I think I totaled 120 hours of study to pass the exam. So I'm not sure. I think that's, from what I've read, is about typical the 100-hour mark.
Yes, all right.
Yeah, so I was pretty happy with that, and I kind of crammed it all into 2 weeks because once I started on it, I wanted 100% focus. So that's the only thing I did for 2 straight weeks. And then as soon as I finished that, it was on to finding projects that I could build with all this new knowledge that I learned. So
wow. So for those of you who are listening and you want to get into tech, this guy, in 1 year, part-time, was able to learn new coding languages, learn new cloud skills, and be able to get job interviews. That is impressive, my friend. Very impressive.
I don't want to downplay the amount of work though. It was part-time, but I still worked 6, 8, sometimes 12 hours a day when I could. It's just I had something else going on and I had to fit it in wherever I could. So some nights I'd be up until 2 a.m. working on something. Other days I'd fit in a couple hours in the morning. It's really just doing whatever, every spare hour I had went towards this. So it was a lot of work, but everyone I think out there can do it. Like it's very possible to do. I don't think I'm special and in any way. Like I'm a normal guy who just worked hard, and I think that a lot of other people can do the same. And I know a lot of people who have done the same. Who you were telling me some of your story before we started this podcast, and how you changed your entire life by just working hard and getting a job that started paying you a lot more money than you were getting, and it really could change the outlook of your life. So if you're in a different situation and you really want to change it, if you have the motivation, all the information is out there, and like we've said, there's a lot of people willing to help. So if you get into these communities and if you just ask questions, there's going to be people all over the place just saying, hey, I can help you here, I can help you here. Just be genuine and honest and where you stand and what type of help you need, and people will come to the call. And if anyone wants to send me messages and if they need any help, like I'm more than happy to give advice to where you should look to learn or anything like that, and tell you about my process a little more in depth, or if they have any questions. I'm always happy to do that. And even as someone who hasn't landed a job yet, I've been surprised at like how many random messages I've got being like, hey, how did you do this? How did you do this? Like when I started blogging, I started getting more questions, and it became really interesting to see that like I'm still, sometimes the imposter syndrome, I still feel a little bit like I don't know what I'm doing.
We all do, Eric.
Yeah, right.
I go through it all the time, and everyone in tech, I'm sure, goes through the same thing. It's just we're considered experts, and in reality, we're students like everyone else.
Yeah, but everyone's at a different part in their learning process, and if you can find someone just slightly ahead of you, they can give good information. So I would recommend to anybody who wants to learn is just reach out to people. Find them on Twitter, Slack, Discord, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you need to go. They're out there.
I was going to ask you, to offer a piece of advice, but I think that just kind of nailed it.
I guess there's just a few small things, I guess, that I would like to talk about, maybe to wrap up.
Sure.
A lot of the learning that I was able to do was because of the mindset that I had early on. And I really like this book, and I've read it multiple times. It's called The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin, and was a chess prodigy, and went through a lot of different things in that process, and then kind of put it all in a book. And one of the big things he talked about was investment in loss, and that a lot of people have a fear of releasing their old habits. If I could do a little sports analogy, like of a quarterback in the NFL who throws maybe the ball in a little bit of an odd way, he can't let go of that. In his learning process, he couldn't let go of that and learn how to throw the ball in maybe a little bit more mechanical way that is considered correct. and sometimes that's just because we're comfortable in doing things that we know. And it comes back to what we were talking about before. You kind of have to let go of some of that stuff that you're doing that, gets you some results, and you have to go and be uncomfortable, and you have
Yes.
to focus on those areas. And
Yeah.
then your learning will just grow exponentially. Things will start clicking faster, and you're really doing yourself a disservice if you're not willing to put yourself out there and be uncomfortable. Because when you find something uncomfortable, you tend to just subconsciously avoid it. And if you can, maybe every time you notice yourself doing that, write it down, look at that list of things that you have, and then go study all those things, because you're kind of just putting that off to doing what you know, because what you know is easy and it's safe. So take the risk, do the uncomfortable thing, and you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, that is such great advice, Eric. I mean, I talk about it so often that we need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's the only way we're going to grow. Um, my son came to me the other day, and he's doing a lot of spelling in school, and he keeps on getting bombarded with these words that he can't spell. And I'm like, just stick with it and you'll get it. And, eventually, if you instill those things in yourself, then, you'll be golden from that point on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it sounds very cliche, but it is also very, very true.
Yes, I
Right?
know.
A million people have said it, and we didn't come up with it, but it's true. So just go out there and do it.
Yeah. At first, when I first heard that term, I was like, what the heck are they talking about? Comfortable being uncomfortable. Makes no sense. But when you actually live it, then it's a different story.
Yeah.
So before we head off, I wanted to open the floor to any comments in the for people who are watching. So if anyone has a question for either Eric or I, please put it in the comments. I will get it answered. So, Eric, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Probably the best way would be to just connect with me on LinkedIn, or send me an email. And that email is ER and then my last name Hallow at Gmail. And I'm sure you can post that a little bit later on as well. Yeah, those are the two best ways to get a hold of me.
Got it. There you go. I got that right, didn't I?
You got it.
Okay.
Perfect.
Just making sure.
No, you're good.
um,
were you surprised at anything you learned about poker today, or?
I'm surprised at how analytical it was. I didn't realize that there was such, I guess you could say, granularity behind it. And, I didn't even think there was coaches behind poker, but it was just, it's really, really fascinating to know that, you look at something like poker and you don't really realize what's behind it. You don't realize strategies. You don't realize that there's so much more that goes behind it, especially when you're playing for hard-earned money.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot there's a lot more than you think, and there's a lot being done with technology. People use what are called solvers, which just basically run a lot of simulations,
Hmm.
try and find the perfect answer in every situation. And that's what basically people do these days, is they run these simulations and they just study these certain situations that they have, and try and figure out the best way to make the most money in that spot. So it is, it's pretty analytical.
It's so cool. Like I'm still blown away by it. So it doesn't look like there are any questions coming in. So I did want to take a moment and thank you again, Eric. It was such an amazing story, and I'm so glad that you could come to the podcast and tell us this story.
Yeah, very happy to be here, and thanks for having me on. I think this is a great thing you're doing with this Bowtie Certified podcast, and I just hope this thing blows up because there's a lot of people out there who need to be featured in the tech world, and this is great.
Yeah, thank you. I'm hoping that this can reach more people, like us, where we started off in a different industry. I know that becoming involved in tech is going to be very prevalent within the next few years, and if I can help out, or if my guests can help out somebody out there better their lives in tech, then that's my goal.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're doing good at it so far.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone out there for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Tune in next week, same bat time, same bat channel, for Bowtie Certified. Thanks again.